Greetings, this is Skyler Saunders seeing what's current. Today, we're going to be talking about philosophy and what it means to be a philosopher, what it means to have the ideals that create and shape cultures over time. This may be a little bit of a lesson to some people, but so I'm going to have a top 10 list at the end of the broadcast and to see if you agree with what I have written. All right. So everybody strap in, get your ice water, get your coffee, get all your different elements, and let's jump into it. Now we have so many philosophies over the decades, over time, and they all constitute one thing: thought. Human thought is what separates us from the animals, as Aristotle once said. Our ability to reason, our rational capacity, our faculty of thinking. And that's one thing that was wrong about Mr. Descartes. He put Descartes before the horse. He said, I think before I am. But you can't think unless you are something in the first place. And then you choose to think. So Ayn Rand corrected him and saying, I am, therefore I will think. You have the opportunity to do that. You have the chance. It's within your grasp as a human being. And that's what really is the crux of philosophy. It's not just parlor games or what you say in a bar to pick up women. It's much more than that. It's a whole lot of a discussion over the finality of life, the beginning of life, and so many things in between. So if you have a conscious idea of what it means to be a philosopher or what it means to know what philosophy is, then you have every opportunity to say that you are a human being because you're alive and you're a being. You exist. Existence exists. That's what the A in A is A stands for. Existence exists. I see you in the chat, Flex Jr. Salute to you. Thank you very much for your arrival here. Come on, make sure you share and tell a friend. Now, with philosophy, I am not a doctorate holder. I'm a dumb community college dropout actually. So I can't say, as a definitive answer to what uh all the philosophies I'm going to discuss actually are. I'm just going to give you my opinion and my estimation of them and my brief and very light understanding of each. We can start with Eastern philosophies like Confucius and Sun Tzu. Now, Confucius had a whole idealism that was separate from a lot of other people that were within that realm. And, you have people like Sun Tzu who created the art of war. Now, he may not be a full, complete philosopher, but to develop a system of what it means to fight and to strategize is like the philosophy of going to war. Then you have your very astute South American thinkers, economists to be exact, and they have their own philosophy of life. And that regard is in regard to uh, the system of looking at what money does to cultures and how it is produced. That's pretty much what the economics mean. Is what is it about the culture, and what is it? How does it relate to money, and how producers make it? So you have people that like later on in the years of history, you have the economists. They call them the Chicago boys because they went to America and studied, and then they came to Chile and they brought forth the ideals of the school in Chicago, University of Chicago, and you have so many of them a part that they built up a structure within Chile to make it the wealthiest country in South America. And now we go around the world a little bit more. We go to Africa. Africa was the origination of everything that includes humanity. Everything from homosexuality to bestiality to cannibalism and I'm not trying to throw them all in the same pot because they're obviously different. I'm just giving examples of how Africa started all things that have to do with humanity and human beings. Fire started within Africa. It was started. This is from Dr. Ivan van Sertima. He said that fire was first controlled over 200,000 years ago in Africa. He had researched how different tribes and different cultures had passed down knowledge, and that's a distinctive factor within humanity because no other animals can do that. No birds, no alligators, no whales can pass on to what information is, what the knowledge is to live life. Only human beings have that capacity, and that was Africa. Now I have to go in and say about the English professors, particularly John Locke. John Locke is responsible for being one of the leading thinkers of all time because he had it in his mind to say that I'm going to put out my own system of thinking and say this is what government ought to be. It's a treatise of government, two governments, I believe is the title. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But in this treatise or this treatise, he explores the notions of what a government should function as, and that led to Great Britain being one of the most powerful nation up until the time of the America's takeover during the late 19th century, and even earlier, with America's win, even though Britain didn't take America seriously, they were too concerned with France and Spain at the time that they considered, being, the most powerful nation at that time period. They had colonized many nations and had introduced many different facets of their culture and their language upon people. Now you may say that was a disastrous thing, and in certain regard, and in some aspects, in some respects, that is a terrible thing, the colonization. But at the same time, it also introduced social norms. It's introduced a more cultivated, more cultured way of living, and a more upright way of speaking because you're using the good English. Now, you have the Scottish. You have the Scottish uh, thinker. He may not be a full philosopher, but the Scottish thinker, Adam Smith, he said, that capitalism is based on the idea of value for value. You don't care about the baker, and the baker doesn't care about you. He wants the money, you want the bread. So there's the exchange. He gets the cash, he values the cash. You get the bread, you get to eat and consume it. And that's how capitalism essentially works. That's one of the best expressions of how he wanted to engage in trade with other people. That's what he was trying to manifest with his writings, with his different thoughts. Now, we have, I was just mentioned earlier, Descartes. You have Sartre. You have Camus. You have all these French philosophers. You have Derrida. He had deconstructionism. And that's a heavy weight to lift, because it concerns, everything from birth to death and in between. And what is the nature of reality? The question of it, how it's literally broken down. Woody Allen even had a movie called Deconstructing Harry, based on Derrida's writings. And that was, his way of trying to sketch out what it meant to be a human being as well. Because that's what philosophy is. It's a way of understanding life. It's a way of understanding ourselves and who we are. That's what the system of thought is within philosophy. And again, I'm no know-it-all. I'm just freestyling right now, going off of whatever I've absorbed and read and took in through my almost 35 years on this earth. But I'm just really passionate about philosophy for that regard. Now, we have to get to the biggies, the huge people behind philosophy that helped shape negatively or positively the world for many years. The German philosophers. Everyone from Nietzsche to Marx to Goethe and so many others. Wittgenstein, Kierkegaard. These are the thinkers, these are the men of the mind that have shaped human history. All the wars that you can think of are because of philosophy. Every single war. We always think about it as physical, bloody battles, and they are. But they start off with an idea. They start off with a concept. They start off with someone thinking about something, putting it down and saying, let's manifest this into reality. Let's create something that takes on something that's even larger than my own thoughts. That's what they thought anyway. There's nothing larger than your own thoughts. It's like there's nothing larger than yourself. With these philosophers, you get different social systems, like Marx. Marx just had Marxism, but he said himself, I'm not a Marxist. Another name for Marxism is, of course, communism, one of the most vicious, evil ideals ever. But it has nothing on Immanuel Kant or Auguste Comte, but especially Kant. I'll get to Kant. Let's get to Comte first. Comte had the idea of altruism. He coined the term altruism. Altruism. Altru or altru, other, ism, our idea. The idea of others. Putting others before self. That's what Auguste Comte came up with. That was his whole role. That was his whole idea. That's what he considered. He wanted the world to know that other people come before you. And you don't really matter. It's about the others. Others matter before you. That's what he wanted to manifest in the world. He wanted to have that be brought out into existence. That fallacy, that evil idea of altruism, which never really existed. Ayn Rand said that. I'll keep going back to Miss Rand. She said that, mysticism was, killed off, collectivism was killed off, but altruism never really lived. It's just an idea of almost being alive. it doesn't have a proper place within the spectrum of philosophy. And the way that we can deal with altruism is, of course, with laissez-faire capitalism. But I wanted to get to the big guy, the most evil man in all of human history, Immanuel Kant, who said that because you're alive means you're dead. That says because of this iPhone existing, it means it doesn't exist. He completely disrupted the entire framework of what it meant to be in existence, what it meant to be real. He divided it into a phenomenal and a noumenal world. That's how he divided the earth and people in it. A new world where it was ideas and abstractions, and the phenomenal world, which was practical and physical. He wanted to disrupt the human brain. He wanted to destroy the mind. And all the ills that we still have and dealing with today, or most of them, are because of his ideas. Because they resonated with so many people that he was able to be a person that advanced those ideas without necessarily checking into what they really meant and how they would affect other people. So, I want to get to this. This is special. This is going down the list, of course. African American blues musicians. Now, hold on for a minute, because these weren't college educated, degree holding, well read sometimes, masters of thought, and they're outside of the ivory towers or inside the ivory towers. They were never inside the ivory towers. They were on the street corners. They're in the back roads. They're in fields. But they created a musical style and a genre that transcended other genres for all time. And a 4-bar structure and an 8-bar structure with a 6-string, the people like Howlin' Wolf, Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, and a whole host of others all combined into a sound that resonated with other people all around the world and continues to be within other genres. But beyond that, the late great playwright and poet August Wilson said that the blues is the African American's greatest literature. In his play, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, he delineates through his character, the actual person that lived was Ma Rainey, but she was made into a character into his play. She said, the blues is about understanding life. That is philosophy. We can see that through years. We can see that through the fact that the blues led on to jazz, led on to rock and roll, led on to so many different forms of music. But it was like the Greeks, which I'll get to soon, because they had an understanding of drama. You had Aristophanes, you had Sophocles, and so many others that knew drama, that knew how to make plot and character, theme, style. And that's how they did it. They made the levels of drama, and that's what the blues was. It was always a problem. It was always an issue. You're not getting something having sex, you are having sex, you're with your friend, you're not with your friends, you almost killed your lover, they almost killed you, and it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And that's the blues. Without the blues, there would be no other forms of music than today. And it was what at one time called nigger music. At one time, it was just called black music. And nobody wanted to touch it until the Brits listened from, the United States. They took in whatever was going on with the United States, and they flipped it on around and turned it into a sound that was like none other. You had the champions also of the blues make rock and roll. You had Little Richard and so many others that started were the architects and the pioneers of this genre. So we're almost at the end. I'm giving you time. Give me time. Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is the philosopher that makes me smile most. Because out of all the people I mentioned, what was the common thread besides Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith? A woman. This woman who was not taken seriously by other thinkers around her in her time frame, in her lifetime. She was not taken as seriously possibly because she was an artist, because she was a novelist. She made great art, and that kind of disqualified her in some people's minds, maybe. But she laid down a framework that was so profound, that resonates so much with just the individual people. It hasn't swept across the world yet, but it's in grasp because her works are still in publication. They're read by over 40 different languages and plus. She created an entire philosophy of objectivism, which held man as a heroic being, with productive achievement as his highest value, and reason as his only consideration. That's the truth. That's what has to be explored. How Ayn Rand flipped it on everyone's heads. How she took it all by herself. No one else. The only help she had was from 1,000 years ago with Aristotle. That was her only claim. And the next will probably be Thomas Aquinas. That would be about the second or third in the rungs of her philosophy. She studied Nietzsche. She found some of his poems and some of his writings to be poetic, but ultimately rejected them because he was too negative and too vicious in his approach. I mean, if you look at the facts that so many people don't realize and don't pay homage to, don't really look at or have never even heard of Ayn Rand, it's really sad. People go through their entire lives without even knowing what Atlas Shrugged was about, or what Fountainhead was about, or We the Living, or Anthem. And her works as nonfiction, The Virtue of Selfishness, For the New Intellectual, Philosophy, Who Needs It? That's the inspiration behind this cast. Because you need it. You out there listening to this voice, you need philosophy, whether you like it or not. You need it to grow a garden, to make a bowl of cereal, to watch TV. You have to have a system of ideas all in concert, all working within your physical body, your mind, controlling all that. and what the response is. Salute to Black Cuddy. Make sure you check out my Cash App or my PayPal account. I respect you. Thank you very much for your support. I wanted to say that this is a safe space. I may say some language that may have offended you, but I'm just telling the truth. I'm telling the reality that I have absorbed and taken in through the cultures that I've studied throughout my almost 16 years. Almost 16 years of study. And this is what I have been able to do, to regurgitate whatever those words were, to let you know that I am still thinking. That's what another thing about comedy. That's the thing about comedy. Comedians are there's too many to name. So I just gave a top 10, and I'm going down the list as we speak. But you had the late great George Carlin say, you know, when asked, "Are you trying to make people think?" He said, "No, I'm just trying to let them know that I am thinking." And that's a philosophical answer. That's a deep intellectual, position to take. That's what's most needed within our curricula and our school systems, and to have those private institutions accept those philosophy degrees, so they aren't working at Starbucks because they can't find a job. They're not working at McDonald's or the Olive Garden because they can't find a job. If they want to work at those places, that's beautiful. I worked at two of the places I named, Starbucks and Olive Garden. Olive Garden wasn't a great experience, but I loved working at Starbucks. I had a great time doing that. But that's what it is. That's what is the truth about Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand spent her whole life, from the year that she was 2.5 all the way up to her 77th year, from the night she died of heart failure, on March 6, 1982. But it all started much earlier than that. February 2nd, Groundhog Day, 1905. But within that time frame, she created something that was revolutionary and radical and extreme. And those are some loaded terms. And let me break them down to a revolutionary means that it completely changed some people's minds. It was a revolution in their own thinking. It's radical because it upends all the contrived ideals that are expounded upon us. It's extreme because it only states what it is. It doesn't go outside. There are 7 virtues. There could be more, but she stated that there were 7, and that's how it is. She said there's 3 cardinal values: reason, purpose, self-esteem. And those are extremes. That's an extreme statement to make on each of those 3. I salute you, Silent Hassan. I see you in the chat. She expounded upon something that nobody had ever done before. The closest again was Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle, but she codified it. She codified the messages that those men had created. She made it into a codified system, and it's still in a closed system, but it still has room to be explored. She had in her book, The Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. Now that's a mouthful, but what that essentially is saying is that this is my intro into what human knowledge is and what it means into the objectivist way of speaking. That's exactly what she wanted to express. And if we didn't have that chance to see her and all her glory through all her years, all her work, everything she had produced, she wasn't perfect in the sense of being a personal level. She may have been over optimistic at times. She may have been too pessimistic at times. But her philosophy stands. She may have had a vicious or harsh, estimation of homosexuals, gay people, lesbians, transgender. But we know now that her whole philosophy is not based on those estimations. It's based on reason, individualism, and capitalism. And let me run down the branches of philosophy. First, you have metaphysics, or metaphysics is just like the basis of ideas of the world around you, everything that exists, everything that happens to be. Then you have epistemology, which is not the science of knowledge, what you know, what you can explore, what you can see, what you can touch, you can take in by your senses. Then you have ethics, which is the system or the science of morality. It's the morals applied to as a science. That's ethics. Being good, knowing what evil is, knowing the difference between good and evil, knowing the degrees of evil and degrees of good. That's what ethics stands for. Then you have politics, and that's to define a social system that's proper for mankind, and that is capitalism, of course. And if I wanted to say about the other two, metaphysics is just existence, basically. But epistemology is reason, and ethics is self-interest or selfishness, according to Ayn Rand. And politics is capitalism. The social system of justice, a system that says that a man can or woman can make their way in this world and trade with others if they so choose. Value for value. And also, the final one, maybe the dessert out of this, entree or this meal of ideas is aesthetics, or the nature of art, and how beauty can be within the world. Exploring how beautiful words can go, how beautiful sculptures can go, how beautiful skyscrapers can go. That's it. MIPA. Think about MIPA. Metaphysics, aesthetics, ethics, politics, aesthetics. That's it. That's what covers philosophy. Now, with all that being said, Ayn Rand was the most important philosopher of the past 100 years. She wasn't the most well known. She wasn't the most respected. She wasn't the most elevated. But she was the most important and most significant philosopher of the past century. That's a fact. Undisputed. You can't mess with her. I almost said something else. But you can't take that away from her. So Ayn Rand, that's the idea behind Ayn Rand. Now, of course, without people of this sort that I'm about to go into, there would be no philosophy. There would be no ideas. The Greeks, the pre-Socratic Greeks, that would be Thales as one who laid the framework. He laid the groundwork for what thinking was. He said, what is thought? Who am I? What is this? Why is that? Am I thinking? Am I real? Is this real? He was the one that did that. Then you have Socrates. He's known best for going around and telling people all kinds of different things, stirring up trouble, making people think for themselves, asking questions, pulling questions out of people. And what did he get as his reward? He was almost like a Greek myth. He was punished for his own virtues, like so many, like Atlas, like Hercules, like Prometheus. He was punished. His punishment was death. There's a joke or a line or some other, euphemistic way of looking at what happened to him, was that Plato, his student Plato, had the idea of hiding him. He said, "Let's go," but the charge was that he was corrupting the minds of the youth, and they were living under a democratic state, and that's important to state because a lot of people are under the assumption that we're living under a democracy. No, we're not. We are not. We're living in America. We're living under a constitutional republic. And that just means that our documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, are what we are governed by, not democracy. Democracy means unlimited majority rule. And what that means is that if you have 5 people and 4 people want to stone you to death, and 4 people agree, and you're the only one that says you don't want to be stoned to death, guess what? You're getting stoned to death, because that's how democracy works. And that's what happened with Socrates. He was poisoned. And that's how the joke went. It went, Plato said, "Come on, I can hide you in this cave. We can escape out of here." And Socrates said, "No, I believe in democracy, and so I'm going to take the poison." And he died. It's a sad shame because he was such a great man. He was such a great thinker. But then you have Plato, the Platonic. We get that as even children. I remember being 7 or 8 years old, and the first time I heard Platonic, relationship, or strictly Platonic, was in a sitcom for a kid show, or a family show. It's just a Platonic relationship. I remember that vividly. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I didn't. What is Platonic? What is Plato? What is this? What are we talking about? He said, his writings, and his writings were mainly lost, or most of them. He said his government, work, the Republic, ironically, that people take in and try to twist around and make it into a democratic thing, but he mainly stated the phases of government, and stated, the positions and the different social relationship that government plays. And he really had the idea of making his own words resonate. All his words are still resonating to this day. Most of the wars that we have fought are because of the Platonists, people who believed in Plato's ideas. He had in his mind the idea that you should live for the state. You don't really exist in importance for yourself. You should live as a peon, or someone under whatever the dictates of the country are. And we see that with all the kind of wars we've had, from the Napoleonic Wars, the 100 Years' Wars, the 30 Years' War, the World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Vietnam, going in order. Iraq, Iran, not Iran yet, but they've had wars, Iran and Iraq. But within America, it's Afghanistan and Iraq, and little skirmishes here and there, all based off of ideas. Every one of them. Not one war was fought just to fight. Had to be some idea. Had to be something of the spread of communism, the spread of socialism, the spread of democracy. Had to be squelched. Had to be just everything but full-fledged laissez-faire capitalism, which would extinguish all wars and all rumors of wars. To take a stab at the Bible. Every time I take advantage of that, I take advantage of that fully. But I see that, it was possible that he spread his word to his student, Aristotle. And the best way to remember that is SPA. Socrates taught Plato, Plato taught Aristotle. Aristotle was probably the greatest male philosopher of all time. The greatest female is, of course, Ayn Rand. And there were other female philosophers. Don't get it twisted. You should see a movie called Agora, with, I think, Rachel Weisz. It's an excellent movie about a woman philosopher, and it was really in real life. But back to Aristotle. He was the one that said, a thing is a thing. It is itself. Ayn Rand was the one that said A is A. And said it is what it is. She was the one that codified it. But Aristotle started it. He started the engine running. And I'm going to Da Vinci then because, the idea for the engine was, thought of way before, the internal combustion engine was even devised from Da Vinci, who was a bastard child and would have been notary like his father, but his father was, he had him at wedlock. So he was a bastard. So he was on his own. He didn't have the Medici to deliver him money or support, food, whatever, to make his paintings and his different drawings and sketches. Aristotle revolutionized the way that people think, and we should thank him. We should bow at whatever statues that exist in the world of Aristotle, because he was the first man of the mind completely. He was the first to say that these are the way that things should be and what things are. A thing is itself, and that's what Aristotle did for Ayn Rand. She said existence exists, and that's what A is A means. Existence exists. It seems like you're saying something obvious, but it's just a different way of saying it, that existence exists. A is A. A thing is itself. And consciousness is just the way that you interpret something. You use your mind. That's what is key here. And that's what Aristotle jump-started. He was the one that declared in his own mind that he would say that man is man. You are indivisible. You are individual that has a mind and can think and do, and you have everything going for you. That's the power of that. That's what Aristotle held. And that is the totality of what the Greeks stood for, They had the mindset. They had their minds until the Romans took over. Romans, were more battle ready, and the Greeks were more thought worthy. And brute force, unfortunately, won the day with the Romans. But the Greeks had a firm grasp of what it is to exist. Ayn Rand was the one that picked up and said existence is identity and consciousness is identification. Now, wait a minute. Existence is identity. So you're identifying something. Okay, I see it exists. It's real. It's there. Okay, I got it. Put that in my pocket. Move on. Consciousness is identification. That's your mind saying it exists and I know it. See, now, going back, you have Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant said, if it exists, it doesn't exist. It's not real because it's real. Because it's a fact, it's not a fact. That's essentially what Immanuel Kant was saying. And the critique of pure reason. Because it's true, it's not true. And it's much deeper than that, but that's just my estimation of what he said. I've not read extensively in Kant's, his whole way of learning. But he was the most evil man because he was in direct opposition to Aristotle. He directly opposed him. He was in direct opposition to what Aristotle taught. And it's a shame because very few of Aristotle's works exist. But he did the dessert. He did drama. And any screenwriter, playwright, even novelist, or any writer worth his salt or her salt knows the Poetics by Aristotle. I've read the Poetics at least 5 times. I am a writer. And it has aided me each and every time to understand the structure and the wave of moving transitions through the plot structure, the Poetics. So that covers the aesthetics. He had epistemology and so many others. He had ethics, he had politics, he had aesthetics and metaphysics. He had MIPA. He had the full MIPA. And that's what I think is so crucial to the fact that we have these philosophers, these thinkers, the ones that shape history. It's not politicians. It's not your president. It's not your dictator. It's the philosophers that really play a part in the politicians' rhetoric and their policies. That's where we are right now. We have to thank or not thank so many people throughout history because they have elevated us or de-elevated us or degraded us to a point where we're no longer ourselves we choose to be. That's the conscious universe. The denial, the outright disavowal of what is true and what is right. He set out to be the monster, but didn't act like it. He was a genteel gentleman. He didn't start wars. He wasn't a brutal dictator. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a murderer. But he made it possible for the murderers, the dictators, the people of mayhem to exist because of his ideals. And you also have to have, so many people that that are nihilists, that don't believe in anything but destruction. And I have to give credit to so many people right now, including Dr. Leonard Peikoff, Dr. Jerome Brook, Dr. Gate, and so many others that have helped me on my journey to understanding what this all means. It's a tremendous effort to put forth a complete system of thought, something that never has been shown before, something that didn't exist in history, in all of human history. Going back to the days when people were just discovering fire and what to do with water, and how if I put this seed in the ground, it's going to make this plant, and this plant I can eat off of it, and this plant that I can send through other channels and trade with other people. That's where we are. And we've come this far because we had so many of the people from, Thales to Howlin' Wolf, to Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, They're all thinkers. They had music to it. They might have been simple lyrics, but they resonated. They had a whole idealism behind everything that they said. The way they sang it, the way they drew out their words. That's what's important. That's what we have to recognize. That's what we have to support. The young philosophers that take on the mantle and take up in stride how to run and be real and know what they're doing when it comes to discussing big ideas. Like, what's the big idea? Living life. Even hip hop, a descendant of the blues, a great great grandchild of the blues. It espouses the same thing: love and hate, war and peace, living the good life. My life is all jacked up. Everything. All of this covers it. It's all within philosophy. And you need it. You do. Everyone who's watching this video, send this and share this and tell them that you need philosophy. You're already living it. That's a joke about architecture. What about architecture? You're living in it. Same thing with journalism. Journalism covers the world. It's also the cliche. It's the first draft of history. It's also a joke. What's black and white and red all over? The newspaper. So, when you have all these ideas swirling around and around the world that's been broadcast and set aside or rediscovered, we have within our grasp the totality of human thought, ill or good, evil or virtuous. That's the key in all of this, to understand what it means to be rational, to use one's mind, to be able to think on your own ever since you're a toddler. Like I said, Ayn Rand, 2.5 years old. There was a question in the audience during a interview of her. And the lady said, do you see yourself as a perfect being? I'm paraphrasing, but Ayn Rand answered quickly. She said, only to the extent that I've lived my philosophy my entire life. That would be the only way I'm a perfect being. That I've consistently lived by the principles that I set out to live by thoroughly and completely and throughout my entire existence. She didn't say all that. I'm just putting sauce on it now. But I just really respect the ideas of Ayn Rand. She just completely brought me to the ones that are, up there at the highest, the Greeks. Because without the Greeks, you got nothing. The Greeks were the ones that started. You can argue Africans, came over and taught the Greeks their lessons in philosophy, and they taught the Romans as well. Maybe. Okay, I'll give you that. But still, the Greeks had to stand on their own with their own ideas. Even if they were taught different ways of thinking, they had to think on their own to keep it to themselves. And then while they had it for themselves, they then express it to other people. It just happens to be that you have so many people encouraged to not think, to become what Ayn Rand called whim worshippers, to be the ones that say that they're more likely to be, hot rod racers and just to get their kicks, and then call that happiness, quote unquote, which it's not. Happiness is non-contradictory joy. What that means is that you have complete and utter bliss for your own mind, for your own state of being. And I'm going to chop up the words just like Dr. Brooke chops up the words he says. But eudaimonia, I'm not going to hold you to saying that's how you pronounce it. Please don't, say that's the proper way, because I'm not sure myself. But eudaimonia means happy state of being, basically, or being in a happy state of mind. You good or happy, or daemon, spirit, nea, or state. So it's a good spirit state. That's what is the crux of that statement. To be fully engaged in your own life and to be happy chronically, as Ayn Rand would say. To be chronically happy. And I owe her so much. And she's no longer with us. She would have been 118 years old this year. But she's no longer with us, as I said. We salute her, though. I salute her, definitely. Without question, without recourse. Everything that she's done has brought upon a greater way of understanding life. Just like the blues singers, just like Ma Rainey said, it's about understanding life in the play. Of course, she may not have said it, but within the character of Ma Rainey, she says understanding life. And that's all philosophy is about. A greater understanding of yourself and your surroundings, everything around you. That's what it's about. So I encourage you to go and study all the names that I have thrown at you, all the different cultures and different music genres and different ways of thinking and looking at things. I encourage you to do all this because it's crucial. It's vital. People, like I said, people go their own whole lives, never heard of Aristotle, never cared, but they had to find a way to eat. They had to find a way to where a place to sleep. They had to find a home. Never heard of Immanuel Kant. Didn't know how evil he was, and how we had the most disastrous bastards in all of human history because of him. Not Karl Marx, not even Auguste Comte, who once again coined the phrase altruism. So, if we have any regard for the human mind, we should thank all the different philosophers that have come before, that will come. Like I said, in 5 years, I'll be releasing my own philosophy. I hope you'll check that out. I just have to do a whole lot more reading, have a lot more studying to do. But I want to make sure you got this top 10 list. Number 10, the Eastern philosophies. Number 9, South American philosophies. Number 8, African philosophies. Number 7, Scottish philosophies. Number 6, English philosophies. 5, French philosophers. 4, German philosophers. 3, African American blues artists. Number 2, Ayn Rand. And number 1, the Greeks. I thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Share, share, share. Contribute to my PayPal and my Cash App. And I will see you soon. Thank you very much and take care.